Hey, it's BT. Today, David and I are talking about negotiations and budgeting and if that is based in lack. So come on inside with us. It's great. I think the audience has been clamoring for this one, David, so this is going to be pretty good. They've wanted to know about this because there are some things in your teaching where occasionally you'll say to yourself like, well, if I negotiate for something, am I coming from a lack place? Or if I'm budgeting my money, am I coming from a lack place? And you said in this episode that it's actually, fiscally sound to do those sorts of things, right? I mean, obviously, I think we want to talk a little bit more about abundance, so I think we should start there. So can you talk a little bit more about, you mentioned the principle of abundance and how it affects your life?
Yeah, so the idea is that there is a universal truth, and that is that there is an abundance. And the idea is that that there's more than enough. Okay, so we're raised with the idea that there's not enough, and it's with almost everything. Like, I can't think of anything that I was like maybe air, was the only thing that and I'm not being funny,
sure.
Like I'm being serious. Most of the things that we're taught is like there's only a limited supply. There's only a limited supply in our life, and that we need to budget our life and manage our life around that limited supply. I was not taught, and most people are not taught, that there's an abundance, that we can create our life the way that we want. We also have to understand how to pay for that, understand what we need to do to create it from that perspective. But there's an abundance, so we can create it any way that we want to create it. We just have to understand the law of cause and effect and how it applies to that. So, yeah, we live in an abundant universe, and everything that we need, want, or desire is here. What is the verification that that's so? The fact that we need, want, or desire it. So it would be incongruent for life to have life need, want, or desire something, and for the thing that we need, want, or desire not to be here. It is harmonious. Life is harmonious because it requires certain things from the universe. The universe provides those things, hence we have life. Because we have life, there is a verification. That is, life is a verification that there is an abundance of things to sustain life, and for life to live abundantly and plentifully. Now, that does not mean that it escapes the law of cause and effect, right? So, there's a lot of different ways to explain this, but you have to bring the law of cause and effect in this. Because it doesn't mean that abundance does not escape the law of cause and effect, nor does it escape the law of ignorance. Period. Here's what that means. Good example: buffalo. Buffalo is a good example. When white people came to North America, there was an abundance of buffalo here, right? It looked like there was more buffalo than we could ever possibly use. Now, let's think about something here. Buffalo was used for basically two or three things, right? It was used for making clothes. It was used for food, right? Maybe the fat or something was rendered into oil. I don't know if they used the bones and the organs or whatever, but whatever. Food, fuel, clothes. That's what it's used for. There's lots of animals that are used for the same thing, not just buffalo. But that's what buffalo was used for. And buffalo fetched a high price, so people saw it as an abundant resource. Nobody's thinking we could kill off all the buffalo. We don't have any buffalo anymore, but it came close to extinction. Another animal that we did that with was beaver. Now, this is very interesting because when we get into law of cause and effect, we can see that a lot of the damage that was done in North America, that was done to the indigenous people of North America, was started off because of the fur trade. The fur trade was pretty much centered around the idea of the beaver top hat in Europe. So there was an abundance of beavers here in the United States. In order to be high society, in order to be anything of anything in Europe at that time, you needed a beaver top hat. And So what happened? The fur traders came to the United States and damn near wiped out the entire beaver population. But in doing that, they also wiped out the indigenous people. They stole their land, they stole their resources. Like the cause and effect of it was horrific. We have come from this place of thinking that because there's an abundance that we can be irresponsible in the cause and effect of how we take that abundance or how we use that abundance. And then what ends up is that we cause a shortage as we see it. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that we have to change over to a different resource. Now, there's as far as we know, there's always enough resources, but in depleting one, we cause a tremendous amount of damage. But why do we do that? Well, we do it because we think that that's the only thing that there is. We do that because we're afraid to do something different. We do that because it seems easier to do it in the moment. And we do it in a lot of ways, we do it with a sense of entitlement. Like when they did it in the United States, there was a sense of entitlement, like they should be able to do this because they can. And that wasn't necessarily true, and a lot of lives were destroyed because of it. When you bring it down to where we are today, a lot of people can't relate to that story at all because nobody today was around then, even though it's our history. And we should have an understanding of what our history is because there's a lot of lessons there. But the truth is that we're raised in an era where most people are taught survival skills for the day that we live in, meaning that you're taught, okay, here's where the world's going. You need to get an education in this direction, and hopefully that education will sustain you and allow you to make enough money to live your life and then have children and pass that life on and again for another generation. People are not taught in great abundance about their purpose. And I think abundance starts there because the purpose is here for a reason. It's a purpose. And that purpose is to help life to continue to expand. So if we're following our purpose and we start to understand the basic laws of life, which are all in the universal laws, and the basic law there is for this purpose of this podcast is cause and effect. Understanding that there's an abundance, but the use of that abundance has a cause and effect. And we have to understand the cause and effect of the use of that abundance. And we have to understand how it impacts our lives and how it impacts the lives of others. There's a basic rule of life that says more life to all. So if we're not using cause and effect and the abundance in a way where it's more life to all, somewhere along the line we're taking life from something. That's where it gets dangerous. Because if we start doing that, then the problem is that that becomes the territory, and we begin to believe in it as in the totality of truth. It's not the totality of truth. It's just a fact of the way that it's being used in ignorance. And when it's being used in ignorance, the problem is that it causes a systemic untruth that we believe in. As long as we believe in that untruth, we raise people based in that untruth. So then we get down to just raising people for survival. So it plays backwards. It plays in reverse in a very damaging way. Then you'll have people that start to come out of it a little bit, but they don't know the truth about everything. So they don't understand how much of their thought process is in magical thinking, is in superstition, is in flat out lies. And when a person says to me, well, isn't using a budget or isn't negotiating coming from lack thinking, you can tell that there's still a whole lot of untruth that they're coming from, that they don't know yet. It's still ignorant to them. So that's where a person has to educate themselves, because really it's about how do we take the abundance and make more abundance. The Upanishads knew this, by the way, like way back in the day. They had a saying, the Upanishads. They said, from abundance, he took abundance and still abundance remained. So that, like when most people hear that, they'd be like, oh, I could take all the fuck that I want and there'll be enough there for everybody. No. That's not how it works. It means that there's an abundance that you take from. It's very abundant, but the abundant is supposed to be used to make things more abundant. If you use it for the depletion of something, you're not going to have abundance, right? Yes, you could take more. We could wipe out the buffalo, then we could take all the beaver, then we could wipe out the beaver, and we could take all the cattle, and we could take all the cattle, and then we could take all the chickens. Eventually, if we don't start returning the abundant to an abundant, if we don't start using the abundance to create more abundance, we'll wipe the abundance out. We have the choice to kill ourselves. We have the choice to destroy the earth, right? If we use the abundance to create abundance, we'll keep creating abundance. Like the Upanishads said, from abundance he took abundance, and still abundance remained. But it never, ever does it escape the law of cause and effect. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does. It's interesting that you bring up, like animals, for example. You brought up buffalo. I had no idea. Well, as you were telling that story, I was thinking about, how we nearly wiped them off the face of the earth. We have done, other species have.
Same with beaver.
Yeah. You wipe them out to the point where, you're just taking them for the sake of taking them. And I came across a picture that showed like a million skulls stacked on top of themselves where they were grinding them into fertilizer. I mean, they were down to like 500 in the late 1800s. Buffalo. Yeah. Now there was over 1 million of them, or over 500,000 in 2017. And I'm sure that number has grown, but you're right. People were taking without ever replenishing the supply. They just said, oh, there's an abundance of them. We'll just hunt them to the verge of extinction. Same with trees nowadays. We gut trees, we gut forests, but we're getting more environmentally aware that we need to plant 3 or 4 more in their place when we take them.
Right.
So we're starting to realize this, and this could go down a conversation around climate change and all these other sorts of things. I mean, I have no doubt we'll figure that out. Like, we're smart people. We'll figure something out. We are not to the end of life as we know it based on that. But, when you start talking about abundance, I really like how you say it can't escape the law of cause and effect. And I'm glad that you did sort of shed some light on that, because when you said that in the episode, I wasn't quite sure what you meant by that. And you really did bring that around to help me understand it. So I appreciate that. Now let's talk a little bit about how it relates to like the business person or the person in business for themselves. So, money management is a big issue for people, and cash flow is a big issue for a lot of people. They're issue for people who are in a job, who are employed, and there's also a big issue for those of people who are in business for themselves. So how can a person who has very little money in the bank embrace the mentality or the principle of abundance? Because they're going to be saying in their head, and I can hear people out there listening to this, like, well, yeah, that's all well and good, David, but I don't have the money in my bank account to show for it. So are there baby steps that a person can take to start embracing
It's
abundance?
not about how much money you have in the bank or you don't have in the bank. It's about how much service can you bring to humanity to be paid for that will allow you to then have abundance. So it starts off with a decision. And the idea is, what do I have of value to bring to the community that I will then in turn receive an abundance for? So I need an abundance of value to be able to bring to the community to receive an abundance in return. That's what the person needs to be asking themselves. If you don't have anything of abundant value, you're not going to get anything of abundant value. That's what causes, and what the worst case scenario of that is like a thief. Right? A thief doesn't have anything of abundant value, but they want abundance in return. So they just go take it from somebody else, right? The idea is that, what can I do to give myself an abundance of worth that I can bring to the table for other people so that I can be the recipient of abundance in return, and then I can live abundantly because of that. So it's about building yourself up to be abundantly in a way where we're providing value to other people.
Right.
And that's where it has to start.
That's where it has to start. Excellent. Yeah, you did talk in the episode about negotiations and how that basically means being a good steward of your finances, because when you do negotiate, you're coming from a place of you don't care to be taken advantage of. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of people out there that do take advantage of other people, and they're always on the take instead of on the give. So you're flipping that story and saying, be a steward of your finances through negotiation, avoid being taken advantage of, but provide a service that's going to pay you in an abundant way, if that's clarification enough.
Well, even if you have nothing, you can go do something. You can, let's say, worst case scenario, the only thing you know how to do is push a broom. You go to work for somebody, whatever they pay you to push the broom, pay attention, learn as much as you can, ask for help. you'll start learning and learning and learning and learning, and you could work yourself up to the owner of the company. If you stop worrying about getting and worrying about how I can be of service to someone, then you start to create an abundant environment inside of yourself. That's abundant thinking. It is abundant giving. It is abundant growth. And it's not coming from a place of entitlement or give me first, any of that. But that's kind of what a lot of people teach. Like, go get what you can get from whoever you can get it from and get it while it's hot.
Yeah.
Type thing.
Yeah.
And that's not true.
That's true.
That's what causes people to live in lack and not abundance.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think you've impressed upon not only me, but also the thousands and thousands of people you've worked with, is that, lack thinking doesn't have a place in an abundant world. So you need to be able to focus on what it is that you can do to bring that abundance into your life. And I like that it made me think about one of the core foundations of your teaching is, allowing yourself to experience what it feels to be abundant. And that for you and a lot of your students is, riding in the front of the plane and sitting in the back of the car. And this isn't about being irresponsible with your money. You do those things with the understanding you're going to put in the work to be able to pay for those things. Because when you start to experience the finer things in life, you don't want to go back. You burn the ship and there is no going back. There's some people that have said, well, that's really irresponsible. And they'll even get into like arguments with you in a microphone about, well, that's not very consciously aware. You shouldn't do that. You're just giving yourself mountains of debt. And there are people out there that will acquire a mountain of debt based on that, but that's not why you do that. It provides people the experience so they can go on themselves. They can realize that this is how I should be able to treat myself, and I'm going to go make the money now to do it again and again and again, right?
Well, but most people are spending money today on the idea that if they spend this tremendous amount of money on an education, that it's going to give them abundance. And it doesn't. They're surprised when it does. It's a broken system that we have not fixed. So a person will spend an enormous amount of money on education. They will come out of school with a tremendous amount of debt, right? Cause and effect. And they have an education that doesn't pay them shit. And they find out that it doesn't pay them anything. And in many cases, the education doesn't even give them enough to climb out of the problem that they've created for themselves. So the person has to learn something that will allow them to surpass that system that is severely broken, right? When you think about professionals, we used to hold professionals in very high esteem in this country. But a professional, a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, whatever, something like that, when they come out of school, they don't know the first thing about business. They have no business education. They know how to lawyer, they know how to doctor, they know how to dentist, but they don't know how to run the business of doing that. Where do they get the clients from? How do they manage those clients? How do they charge those clients, right? How do they market? How do they sell? How do they advertise? How do they run a business? How do they hire? How do they fire? How do they know who to hire? How do they know where the hell to hire them from? They don't learn that.
Yeah, they don't teach that.
They don't teach that.
Studies.
Yeah. So the other thing is that in a lot of the other things that are going on, most of the business stuff that they teach in school today is totally outdated. I mean, it's so outdated from what the real world is. It's unreal. If you're going to get an education in business, you got to go work for a business that is in the industry that you want to start a business in. You got to get a really solid education of the way the world is right now, and then understand the fundamentals when you go start, of what it is that you're going to do. And if you don't do that, your chances of failure are really high. When you look at statistically a business, if you let the statistics tell the story, it's one of the worst things a person can do because the failure rate is so enormous. But when you look at what causes the failures, it tells a completely different story because most of it is about ignorance. Not enough research, not enough money, not enough skill set, not enough willingness to do the work. It's never not enough resources because it's just about lack of being resourcefulness. So those are two very different things. But again, we're getting back to the cause and cause and effect then, but also the lack of willingness to do what it takes to get to an abundant perspective. And a person has to be willing to do those things in order to live in abundance. And then that's where the budget comes in. That's where the negotiation comes in. Am I being a good steward over the money that I have for the business? Am I taking enough money and putting it into the areas of the business that it costs money to grow? Everybody buys customers, whether they realize it or not. You're putting money into advertising dollars. You're putting money into marketing dollars. You're putting into people that have the education and the knowledge to build the strategies to do that. Otherwise, there's a billion businesses out there. How's anybody going to know about your business? Nobody's going to know. A lot of people that don't have a business, they're under the false idea that if your product is good enough, everybody will know about it. Somewhere, somehow, they came up with this idea, and there's no truth in it whatsoever. Companies that have expanded where everybody knows about them, they strategically built the company that way, and they put a lot of money into the building of the company that way. So, you have to be informed. You have to have education. You have to have knowledge around this, and the schools don't teach this. So you have to figure out where you're going to get this education from. And you're either going to get it through working for somebody and accepting whatever it is that they pay you and paying very close attention to everything that they're willing to teach you and then go out and do it on your own, or you're going to hire a coach that knows how to get you there. But even then, you have to have some kind of skill set. You have to have something to bring to the table. I mean, nobody can teach you how to make money from nothing. You need to bring something to the table, and then they can show you strategies and mindset of how to change it. But budgeting and negotiating is absolutely essential to do it in a way that you understand cause and effect, and you're doing it in a way that's abundant.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that came into my head was in the 10 years or 11 years that I've been working with you in this industry, we've seen a lot of people become disenfranchised with the corporate world, and then they want to become a coach. So they come into this industry, and it's been flooded with people that think they're just going to become a coach, and that you're just going to put a sign up that says I'm a coach, and you're going to be flooded with business. And this industry is riddled with people that didn't make it because they didn't think that there was going to be a willingness. Every time you bring up willingness, I think to myself, like, that's what separates those from those who made it to those who didn't, is the willingness to do whatever it takes. There's some people who will become an intern somewhere and just learn the business and then start a business for themselves. Or there's people that will dive in and they'll learn it as they go, build the plane as they fly it, so to speak. But there's other people who just think you're just going to become this person and people are going to show up. And that's just not the case. That's cause and effect again.
Right.
Yeah, there's people out there who believe that, well, why am I not making it? I said I was going to start a business and here I am, but nobody's finding you. There's steps that have to be taken, right?
Yeah.
So,
and there's other people that are they're contributing to the problem by selling like the idea of being a coach, which is how I got involved in the business. So the problem with it is that it's flooded with people who don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't know how to coach. They haven't really done anything in their life. And they think they're going to come in and they're going to charge these crazy prices to make a lot of money, like a lot of other coaches are. But they don't understand that those coaches, number one, they did something. Number two, they know how to get results. They're very, very good at what they do. It's not just like I'm going to hang up a shingle and I'm going to be a millionaire being a coach. I mean, your chances of becoming a very successful coach today are very, very small unless you're willing to put in a tremendous amount of work to be one of the best.
And you have gone through it yourself. I think that's...
Yeah, well, you've got to have done something.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I know, I can see, like, I can spot it now. I wasn't able to before, but I can spot people that they're shammy. You know what I mean? They're teaching and coaching about something that I know for a fact they've never experienced themselves. You have done that. Like, you've gone through it. You've told your story. You went from the dock, to where you are today and that's why when we hired you as our coach, years and years and years ago, we were able to lean on your expertise that, hey, listen, I've been there before. I know where you're at. Stay the course, do this. And I guarantee you, you'll get through
Right.
it. And that's where we did. But
Right.
you went through it. There's a lot of people that didn't.
No.
Yeah. It's
They're actually, what they're doing is they're failing in what they're doing. So they're not like, well, I'm going to be a coach instead, right? It's like,
it's
remember the
so
old saying, like, that how did it go? Those that do. Those that can't teach, and those that can't teach gym.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I just read that last week. I'm like, boy, that's right on there. Sorry, my fellow gym teacher friends. You know who you are. I love you to death. No, it's so true. But yeah, this was a good episode to talk a little bit about. I like when we bring lack into the conversation because we realize that we are living in an abundant world, even though maybe your life isn't reflecting that right now. There is abundance out there, but you've got to be willing. There's that word again, to put in the work, put in the effort, and if you stay the course and don't jump between things, you will eventually get there.
Yeah.
You'll get there. So, well, thanks for coming inside.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Hey, if you like this episode, be sure and check out the original episode on this same topic. It's really good information and something you can use today. Make it a great day. We'll see you next time.